Good afternoon, sir.
Good
My
afternoon.
name is Manav. Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.
Sir, my question is, in Chinese we say China as China, and in English also China as China. Same goes for Japan, Pakistan, American. Now, you have written a book, India that is Bharat. I can also say India that is Hindustan. India के इतने नाम क्यों? First. Second question is, sir, until when the batch of being a minority sector, Article 29 and 30 के कवच में, the government will give free hands on the protection of this religious minority community, and the government will carry on means governing the religious majority temples. So these are my questions.
So one small correction. China is not China in Chinese. Japan is not Japan in Japanese. They have different names. And as someone who's done some amount of reading on this, that's the difference is China doesn't call itself China or using a name that the rest of the world has given it. Bharat constantly calls itself India, and it takes a lot of pride in it. And it feels that the use of Bharat to call Bharat, despite its presence in the constitution, somehow violates our misplaced notions of secularism. During the Constituent Assembly debates, there was a very clear discussion on why not Hindustan, why Bharat, Bharatvarsha, so on and so forth. They finally said, Jambudweep is a geographical notion, Bharatvarsha is a cultural notion, Bharat is a political notion. They're very clear about these distinctions. And so they said, Bharatvarsha or Aryavarta effectively represents a cultural sphere of influence. But as a political entity, you will call it Bharat. Hindustan is a later introduction thanks to the introduction of Farsi and how the Turkic Mongoloid invaders, such as the Mughals, started calling it Hindustan and so on and so forth. But Bharat was traced to the Puranas directly. So I have extracted discussions from the Constituent Assembly where they trace the use of Bharat to I think it's Vayu Purana. I'm not sure. I could be entirely wrong. You'll have to pardon me if I'm getting it wrong. And we've been constantly told that the word Bharat comes from Raja Bharat, which may not be entirely true also. So scholars will tell you Bharat effectively comes, and I'll be branded a Manuvadi now. The other name for Manu is Bharat. And therefore a land of Manu or the land of Manu is called Bharat. Bharat is not a word, it's actually an acronym. And I happened to come across this where one scholar, rather in fact shared with me authoritative sources to exactly explain where the word Bharat comes from. Any case, coming back to the point, Hindustan is not something that I would want to subscribe to because I'm asking myself, where does this word come from? It comes from an imposed position from somebody else. What do my sources say are my name, and therefore Bharat is what I would be comfortable with. Coming to your question of secularism and all these things, it's useless to ask this question. Right to Education Act, when it was introduced by the Congress government, the opposition specifically said, why should minority educational institutions be exempt from the application of the Right to Education Act? And therefore, if you read the opposition debates at that point, they opposed it tooth and nail, saying this violates the principle of equality. If a societal obligation is cast, saying children until the age group of 14 must have the right to education, and you say that this is a societal obligation, why would you say that this obligation is exclusively only on those institutions which are non-minority institutions? In that sense, aren't you taking the two-nation theory forward by saying that certain groups are completely exempt from the application of laws? So on the one hand, you have a problem with the special treatment of Jammu and Kashmir under Article 370, but you don't see a problem with the exemption given to minority institutions on Right to Education Act. Now let's come to the political hypocrisy of it. You have been in power for the last 8 years, close to 9 years now. Why didn't you repeal that particular exemption? Who is to blame here? The Congress really has no power today to stop anything that you do. You have the power to bulldoze anyone and everyone. Why haven't you done it? How many Hindu schools and Hindu-run institutions and non-minority institutions were shut down as a consequence of the economic liabilities imposed by the Right to Education Act? There are multiple websites dedicated to this. In Delhi alone, several hundreds of schools were shut. And yet there is no movement on this front. This government still believes that it's a badge of honor for it to showcase the budgetary allocation for minority welfare schemes. Minority Welfare Ministry was set up only in 2006. It was not set up under Nehru. 2006 it was set up. You opposed it when you were in opposition. Did you deem it fit to dismantle this particular ministry in 2014 or at least in 2019? Is this in your list of priorities at least in 2023? No, it's not. It's very convenient to constantly bash previous dispensations. I would say rightly so, bash them for what they have done because we are facing the continuing effects of it. But जब सत्ता आपके हाथ में आ जाता है, आप उसका प्रयोग कैसे करते हैं? पहले टर्म में तो आपके पास you'll have enough excuses to say नहीं इन्होंने इतना गड्ढा खोदा है कि मुझे रोड भरना पड़ रहा है. You can say all of that. आप दूसरे टर्म में भी यही कहेंगे. You can't say that you have enough clout to get the goodwill of the Middle East and all other countries, but you don't have enough clout to make these fundamental changes in your own country.